The alien invasion begins. The skies over New York City darkened unnaturally on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. At first, people thought it was an unseasonable storm, but as they craned their necks upward, their eyes widened in disbelief. Massive, obsidian ships unlike anything ever seen on Earth loomed overhead, their sleek hulls reflecting the dimming sunlight. Sarah Chen, a quantum physicist at Columbia University, stood frozen on the campus lawn. Her coffee cup slipped from her fingers, splattering across the manicured grass. Around her, students and faculty alike stood in stunned silence, their faces a mix of awe and terror. "It's happening," Sarah whispered to herself, her mind racing through years of theoretical discussions and debates about extraterrestrial life. But nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The alien ships hung motionless for what felt like an eternity. Then, without warning, beams of searing blue light erupted from their underbellies. The air filled with an otherworldly hum as the beams swept across the city, vaporizing everything they touched. Skyscrapers crumbled, streets melted, and chaos erupted as people fled in panic. Sarah snapped out of her trance and sprinted towards the nearest building. "Everyone inside," she shouted, ushering stunned onlookers into the shelter of the university's sturdy walls. As she slammed the doors shut behind her, the windows rattled with the force of explosions outside. Across the ocean, in a hidden bunker beneath London, General Marcus Blackwood of the United Earth Defense Force received the first frantic reports of the attack. His weathered face, creased with the lines of countless battles, remained stoic as he processed the information flooding in from around the globe. "It's not just New York," his aide, Lieutenant Emma Frost, reported breathlessly. "We're getting similar reports from Beijing, Moscow, Cairo, and Sydney. Sir, it's a coordinated global assault." Marcus's steel-gray eyes narrowed as he surveyed the holographic display of Earth, red dots blossoming across its surface like a deadly rash. "How the hell did we miss this?" he muttered, more to himself than to Emma. "Where's our early warning system?" "That's just it, sir," Emma replied, her voice tight with tension. "There was no warning. They just appeared. Our most advanced sensors didn't pick up a thing until they were right on top of us." The general's mind raced through the implications. An alien force capable of bypassing Earth's most sophisticated detection systems was beyond anything they had prepared for. Years of budget cuts and political squabbling over the necessity of a planetary defense force now seemed like a cruel joke in the face of this overwhelming threat. "Get me the Security Council," Marcus barked, striding towards the communications hub. "And someone find out why our orbital defenses haven't engaged." As chaos reigned on the surface, the International Space Station hung in eerie silence. Commander Yuki Tanaka floated in the observation module, her normally serene face etched with horror as she watched the alien ships positioning themselves around the planet. "Houston, do you copy?" she called into her headset for the 100th time. Nothing but static answered her. Whatever the invaders had done, it had severed all communication with the ground. A flash of movement caught Yuki's eye. A smaller craft had detached from one of the massive ships and was heading straight for the space station. Her heart raced as she realized the aliens' intentions. The ISS was about to become the first point of contact between humanity and its invaders. "Everyone to the Soyuz," Yuki ordered her crew over the intercom. "Prepare for immediate evacuation." But even as she spoke, she knew it was futile. Their escape pod was no match for the alien vessel's speed and technology. The alien craft docked with a precision that spoke of vastly superior technology. Yuki and her crew huddled near the airlock, makeshift weapons in hand. A wrench, a fire extinguisher, anything that might serve as a last line of defense. The airlock hissed open, and through it stepped beings that defied easy description. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with each movement. Their eyes, large and multifaceted like those of insects, surveyed the humans with an unsettling intelligence. One of the aliens stepped forward, raising a device in its 3-fingered hand, A beam of light scanned over Yuki and her crew, and to their astonishment, a voice emanated from the device, in perfect English. "Your planet is now under the control of the Zarkan Empire," the alien announced, its voice devoid of emotion. "Resistance is futile and will result in your annihilation. Cooperate, and you may be permitted to serve." Back on Earth, the initial shock of the invasion was giving way to desperate resistance. In the skies over Washington, D.C., squadrons of F-35s engaged in a futile dogfight with alien fighters. The human pilots, among the best trained on the planet, found themselves hopelessly outmatched by craft that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Captain Jake Retiree watched in horror as his wingman's jet exploded in a ball of fire. The alien fighter had moved so fast, it was nothing but a blur on his radar. "Damn it," Jake cursed, pulling his aircraft into a tight loop to avoid incoming fire. "This is Raptor Leader to all units," he called over the radio. "Conventional tactics are useless. Switch to guerrilla strikes. Hit and run only." But even as he gave the order, Jake knew it was too little, too late. The skies were rapidly emptying of human aircraft, while the alien ships seemed untouchable. On the ground, the situation was equally dire. In the suburbs of Paris, Marie Dupont, a schoolteacher turned impromptu resistance fighter, led a group of survivors through the sewers. Above them, the sounds of destruction and alien weaponry echoed through the streets they had once called home. "Keep moving," Marie whispered, her voice hoarse from the acrid smoke that permeated even the underground. In her hands, she clutched a hunting rifle, a pitiful defense against the invaders' advanced technology, but it was all they had. A child whimpered behind her, and Marie turned to offer what comfort she could. "Chez petite," she soothed. "We'll be safe soon." But as she spoke the words, she wondered if there was anywhere left on Earth that could truly be called safe. As the first day of the invasion stretched into night, humanity reeled from the relentless assault. Cities lay in ruins, governments were in chaos, and the death toll climbed into the millions. Yet pockets of resistance began to form, fueled by the indomitable human spirit. In the mountains of Colorado, a hastily assembled group of scientists, led by Dr. Alan Chong, worked feverishly to understand the alien technology. They had managed to salvage pieces of a downed fighter, and now they pored over the wreckage, searching for any weakness they could exploit. "Look at this," Alan murmured, holding up a fragment of the ship's hull. "The molecular structure is like nothing I've ever seen. It's as if it can adapt to different types of energy weapons." His colleague, Dr. Fatima Al-Rashid, nodded grimly. "No wonder our weapons are useless against them. But every technology has its limits. We just need to find theirs." As scientists sought answers, world leaders who had survived the initial attack gathered in a secure underground facility. The debates were heated, with some advocating immediate surrender to save what was left of humanity, while others insisted on fighting to the last. U.S. President Eleanor Mitchell, her face ashen but determined, addressed the gathered leaders. "We cannot and will not submit to these invaders," she declared. "Humanity has faced extinction before, from our own making, and we've always found a way to survive. We will do so again." But even as she spoke, reports came in of alien ground forces deploying across the globe. They moved with ruthless efficiency, rounding up humans for unknown purposes. Those who resisted were vaporized on the spot, their bodies reduced to ash in an instant. In the slums of Mumbai, Raj Patel, a former software engineer, led a group of hackers in a different kind of resistance. They worked tirelessly to breach the aliens' communication networks, hoping to glean any information that might give humanity an edge. "I think I've got something," Raj announced, his eyes glued to lines of incomprehensible alien code. "It looks like they're using some kind of quantum encryption, but there's a pattern here. If we can just—" His words were cut short as an explosion rocked their hideout. Alien shock troops had found them. Raj and his team scrambled to erase their data and escape, but they knew their chances were slim. As the first 24 hours of the invasion drew to a close, Earth stood on the brink. Humanity, for all its achievements and potential, faced an enemy of unimaginable power and cruelty. Cities burned, millions were dead or missing, and hope seemed in short supply. Yet in hidden bunkers, ruined cities, and remote outposts, the seeds of resistance were taking root. Humanity, with its back against the wall, was preparing to show the universe why it should never be underestimated. In the smoldering ruins of what was once Chicago, a grizzled veteran named John Hawkins emerged from his basement shelter. He looked up at the alien ships still hovering in the sky and felt a fire ignite in his chest. John had fought in wars before, but never one like this. As he gripped his old service rifle, a determined smile crossed his face. "All right, you alien bastards," he growled. "You want a war? We'll give you a war." And so, as a new day dawned on a changed Earth, humanity prepared to fight for its very existence. The alien invaders had made a crucial mistake. They had underestimated the resilience, creativity, and sheer determination of the human spirit. The war for Earth had only just begun. The reluctant hero emerges. The Montana wilderness stretched out before retired Colonel James Hawkins, its vast expanses of forest and mountains seemingly untouched by the chaos engulfing the rest of the world. From his cabin's porch, the 60-year-old veteran sipped his morning coffee, his weathered face creased with worry as he listened to the emergency broadcasts on his old radio. "This is the emergency broadcast system. The alien invasion continues unabated. All civilians are advised to seek shelter immediately. Do not attempt to engage the enemy." James clicked off the radio, his steely blue eyes scanning the horizon. He had chosen this isolated spot for his retirement, seeking peace after years of combat. Now, it seemed, war had found him once again. A distant rumble caught his attention. At first, he thought it might be thunder, but the sound grew steadily louder. James's instincts, honed by decades of military service, kicked in. He ducked inside his cabin just as an alien craft zipped overhead, its passage creating a sonic boom that rattled the windows. "Damn," James muttered, reaching for the secure satellite phone he'd kept as a final link to his old life. He had hoped to stay out of this fight, but it was clear now that nowhere on Earth was truly safe. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. General Blackwood speaking. "Marcus, it's Hawkins," James said, his voice grave. "Looks like your alien friends have found their way to my neck of the woods." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, "James, I was hoping I wouldn't have to make this call, but we're out of options. We need you back." James closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders once more. "I'm retired, Marcus. I hung up my boots for a reason." "I know, old friend," Marcus replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "But you're the best strategist we've ever had. These aliens, they're unlike anything we've ever faced. We're losing, James, badly." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. James thought of all the young men and women he'd trained over the years, imagining them facing an enemy they couldn't hope to defeat. He thought of the millions of civilians caught in the crossfire, of a world teetering on the brink of annihilation. "All right," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm in. What's the plan?" Half a world away, in the ruins of Beijing, Captain Lai Wei of the Chinese People's Liberation Army led her squad through the rubble-strewn streets. They moved silently, their adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the destroyed urban landscape. "Contact, 2 o'clock, her second-in-command whispered. Lai raised her hand, signaling the squad to halt. Through the haze of dust and smoke, she could make out the silhouettes of 2 alien soldiers patrolling the area. Lee's mind raced, evaluating their options. A direct confrontation would be suicide. They had learned it the hard way in the early days of the invasion. But if they could take one of the aliens alive, she signaled her plan to the squad. They moved into position with practiced efficiency, setting up a carefully orchestrated ambush. Lai held her breath, waiting for the perfect moment. "Now," she hissed. The squad sprang into action. EMP grenades detonated, temporarily disabling the aliens' energy shields. Before they could recover, Lai's team was on them. The fight was brutal and swift. One alien went down under a barrage of gunfire, its iridescent blood staining the rubble. The other, momentarily stunned, was quickly subdued. "Package secure," Lai reported into her comm unit, requesting immediate extraction. As her team prepared to move out with their alien prisoner, Lai couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this capture would provide the intelligence they so desperately needed. Back in Montana, James Hawkins prepared for war. He packed efficiently, years of military discipline evident in every movement. Weapons, survival gear, and most importantly, the tactical computer he'd sworn he'd never use again. As he worked, his mind was already analyzing the situation, forming strategies. The aliens had the advantage in technology and numbers, but they were fighting on unfamiliar terrain. Earth's diverse environments and unpredictable weather patterns could be turned into weapons if used correctly. James paused as he picked up a framed photo. A much younger version of himself surrounded by his old special ops team. How many of them were still alive? How many were out there fighting right now? "Hang in there," he murmured to the faces in the picture. "The old man's coming back for one last dance." A low rumble in the distance snapped him back to the present. The alien craft was returning. James slung his pack over his shoulder and headed for the door. It was time to disappear into the wilderness he knew so well and begin his journey to the nearest resistance outpost. As James melted into the forest, Sarah Chen worked feverishly in a makeshift lab beneath the ruins of Columbia University. The quantum physicist had gone from studying theoretical particles to frantically trying to understand alien technology in a matter of days. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, staring at the holographic display of an alien power core they had managed to salvage. "The energy output is off the charts, but I can't identify the source." Her colleague, Dr. Robert Mackey, looked up from his own work. Could it be some form of zero-point energy? Or maybe they found a way to harness dark energy? Sarah shook her head, frustrated. "Whatever it is, it's beyond our current understanding of physics. But we need to figure it out fast. It's the key to their FTL drives, their weapons, everything." As they worked, neither scientist noticed the small drone that had slipped into the lab through a crack in the ceiling. It hovered silently, its multifaceted eyes recording everything. In London, General Marcus Blackwood stood before a holographic map of Earth, watching as more and more areas turned red, indicating alien control. The few remaining blue zones, areas still under human control, were shrinking by the hour. "Sir," Lieutenant Frost approached, her face grim. "We've lost contact with the Australian resistance, and the aliens have begun some kind of large-scale construction project in the Sahara." Marcus nodded, his face a mask of determination. "What's the status on Operation Lazarus?" "The first batches of enhanced soldiers are ready for deployment," Frost reported. "But sir, the process is not without risks. We're seeing severe psychological side effects in some subjects." The general's jaw tightened. He knew the ethical implications of what they were doing, using experimental technology to enhance human soldiers, pushing them beyond normal physical and mental limits. But what choice did they have? "We're out of options, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "Deploy them. And pray it's enough to buy us some time." As humanity's leaders grappled with impossible decisions, ordinary people across the globe found courage they never knew they possessed. In the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, Maria Oliveira, a 19-year-old street artist, used her talents to create massive murals that served as coded messages for the resistance. Her art, beautiful and defiant, became a symbol of hope for the oppressed population. In the scorching deserts of the Middle East, Bedouin tribes who had roamed the sands for centuries now used their unparalleled knowledge of the terrain to run sabotage missions against alien supply lines. And in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, The crew of the submarine U.S. Nautilus maintained a lonely vigil. They were one of the last intact naval assets Earth had left, silently patrolling the depths, waiting for the moment to strike. As James Hawkins trekked through the Montana wilderness, his tactical mind was in overdrive. The aliens' technology was superior, yes, but every force had its weaknesses. The key was to find them and exploit them mercilessly. He thought back to his days as a young lieutenant, fighting guerrilla forces in distant jungles. Those fighters, with their inferior weapons and minimal training, had still managed to be a thorn in the side of a superior military force. Now, humanity needed to become the ultimate guerrilla army. As night fell, James made camp in a small cave, hidden from aerial view. He powered up his tactical computer, linking it to the Resistance's secure network. Information began to flow. Troop movements, alien patrol patterns, scattered intelligence reports from around the globe. A particular report caught his eye. A successful capture of an alien soldier in China. James leaned in, reading the details with intense focus. If they could interrogate the alien, understand its psychology, its weaknesses. Suddenly, his computer pinged with an incoming transmission. It was a video call from General Blackwood. "James," Marcus's tired face filled the screen. "Glad to see you made it. We got a situation developing, and I need your input." The general quickly briefed James on Operation Lazarus, the program to enhance human soldiers using reverse-engineered alien tech. "We're seeing incredible results in terms of physical performance," Marcus explained. "But the psychological effects are concerning. We're losing their humanity." James frowned, his mind racing through the implications. "It's a devil's bargain, Marcus. We need every edge we can get, but at what cost? If we lose our humanity in this fight, what are we even fighting for?" "I know," Marcus sighed, "but what choice do we have? The aliens are pushing us to extinction. We need a game changer." James was silent for a long moment, his tactical mind weighing options, calculating risks and potential outcomes. Finally, he spoke. "We need to think bigger, Marcus. Enhancing individual soldiers isn't enough. We need to enhance our entire strategy." He leaned closer to the camera, his eyes alight with determination. "The aliens think they're fighting a conventional war. We need to show them they're not. No more pitched battles. No more trying to match them tech for tech. We go full asymmetric warfare. Global guerrilla campaign." Marcus listened intently as James outlined his plan. It was audacious, risky, and went against every conventional military doctrine. But conventional had stopped working the moment those alien ships appeared in the sky. "It's insane," Marcus said when James finished. "But it just might work. How soon can you get to HQ to start implementing this?" James glanced at his map. "Give me 3 days. I'll be there." As the call ended, James felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. The odds were stacked against them. The enemy was technologically superior, and defeat seemed all but certain. But humanity had one advantage the aliens couldn't match: the indomitable human spirit. James Hawkins, the reluctant hero, stepped out of his cave and looked up at the star-filled sky. Somewhere up there, the alien motherships loomed, thinking their victory was assured. A grim smile crossed his weathered face. "All right, you bastards," he muttered. "Let's see how you handle a real fight." With that, he shouldered his pack and set off into the night. The war for Earth was about to enter a new phase, and James Hawkins was determined to teach these aliens a lesson they'd never forget. Guerrilla warfare. The underground resistance headquarters bustled with activity as James Hawkins strode through its reinforced doors. The facility, hidden deep within the Rocky Mountains, was a maze of repurposed mining tunnels and hastily constructed command centers. Despite the grim circumstances, there was an energy in the air, a sense of purpose that came from fighting against impossible odds. General Marcus Blackwood greeted James with a firm handshake. "Good to have you back, old friend," he said, his voice thick with emotion. James nodded, his eyes already scanning the tactical displays that lined the walls. "Bring me up to speed," he said, slipping easily back into the role of commander. For the next hour, James absorbed every piece of intelligence they had on the alien forces. He studied their patrol patterns, analyzed their technology, and pored over reports from resistance cells around the globe. As he worked, a plan began to form in his mind. "All right," he said finally, addressing the room full of military leaders and civilian experts. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn Earth into a playground of hell for these invaders." James outlined his strategy, his voice growing more animated with each word. "We can't match them in open combat, so we don't try. Instead, we go for death by 1,000 cuts. Hit and run attacks, sabotage, psychological warfare. We make them fear every shadow, distrust every piece of terrain." He turned to Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been brought in from New York for her expertise in alien technology. "Doctor, I need you and your team to focus on 2 things. First, find a way to disrupt their communication systems. Even temporary blackouts could give us a crucial advantage. Second, keep working on understanding their power sources. If we can knock those out, we might just turn the tide." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We've made some progress on decrypting their quantum communications, and I have a theory about their power cores that I'd like to test." James then addressed a grizzled Special Forces operative. "Colonel Ramirez, I want you to put together strike teams. Small, fast, and absolutely lethal. Train them in every dirty trick we know, and then invent some new ones. These teams will be our scalpel, striking at critical weaknesses in the alien operations." As James continued to lay out his plan, the mood in the room shifted from despair to cautious hope. For the first time since the invasion began, they had a strategy that might actually work. Thousands of miles away, in the dense jungles of the Amazon, a very different kind of resistance was taking shape. Indigenous tribes, long accustomed to protecting their lands from outside threats, had banded together to form an unlikely but effective fighting force. Ava, a young Kayapo warrior, crouched in the canopy of a massive tree, her body painted in intricate patterns that served as both camouflage and a symbol of her people's defiance. Below her, an alien patrol moved through the underbrush, their advanced sensors struggling to penetrate the thick foliage. Ava nocked an arrow to her bow, a weapon that seemed primitive but had been modified with a tip made from salvaged alien alloy, capable of penetrating their energy shields. She waited, patient as the jaguar, for the perfect moment to strike. The signal came, a bird call that was just slightly off, unnoticeable to anyone not born in these jungles. Ava loosed her arrow, watching with grim satisfaction as it found its mark in the alien leader's multifaceted eye. Before the others could react, the jungle erupted in a coordinated assault of arrows, blow darts tipped with neurotoxins, and improvised explosives. In minutes, the alien patrol was decimated, their bodies disappearing into the undergrowth as the indigenous warriors melted back into their forest home. It was a scene being repeated across the globe as humanity learned to turn its diverse environments into weapons against the invaders. Back at Resistance HQ, James Hawkins pored over reports of similar guerrilla actions from around the world. Each small victory added up, slowly but surely eroding the aliens' hold on the planet. But he knew they needed something bigger, a way to strike at the heart of the invaders' operation. "What's the status on the captured alien?" he asked Lieutenant Frost. "Still alive, sir," she reported, "but our interrogation methods have been ineffective. Their psychology is so different from ours, we're struggling to find any common ground for communication." James frowned. Then an idea struck him. "Get me Dr. Anaya Puddle from the Xenobiology Department. I want to try a different approach." Hours later, Dr. Paddle stood before the containment cell, her dark eyes studying the alien captive with a mixture of fear and fascination. The creature was restrained but alert, its iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh lights. "Remember," James said quietly, "we're not trying to break it. We're trying to understand it. Use your expertise to find a way to communicate." Anaya nodded, took a deep breath, and entered the cell. What followed was a painstaking process of trial and error, as she attempted to establish a baseline for communication. She used a combination of visual symbols, mathematical equations, and even rudimentary attempts at mimicking the aliens' own language. For days, progress was frustratingly slow. But slowly, painfully, a form of communication began to emerge. It was Dr. Patel who made the breakthrough, recognizing patterns in the aliens' bioluminescent skin changes that corresponded to emotional states. "It's not just a prisoner," she reported excitedly to James and the others. "It's scared. And more than that, I think it's disillusioned. There's discord among the invaders." This information was gold to James. If there were cracks in the aliens' unity, they could be exploited. "Keep working with it," he ordered. "Find out everything you can about their command structure, their motivations, their weaknesses." As Anaya continued her work with the alien captive, the global resistance movement gained momentum. In the vast steppes of Central Asia, nomadic horsemen used their unparalleled riding skills to run circles around alien patrols, striking with devastating hit-and-run attacks before disappearing into the grasslands. In the megacities of East Asia, resistance cells turned the urban jungle to their advantage. They used the labyrinthine alleyways and dense architecture to set elaborate traps, turning each city block into a potential death trap for alien forces. Even in occupied territories, the human spirit refused to be cowed. In Paris, a group of artists and historians worked tirelessly to preserve human culture, hiding priceless artifacts and digitizing libraries of human knowledge. Their message was clear: even if the aliens won, they would never erase what it meant to be human. James coordinated these global efforts from the Resistance HQ, using a combination of old-school tactics and salvaged alien tech to maintain a secure communication network. But he knew that for all their successes, they were still only buying time. They needed a decisive blow against the alien leadership. The opportunity came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chen burst into the command center, her eyes wild with excitement. "We did it," she exclaimed. "We cracked their power source." James leaned forward, his full attention on the scientist. "Explain." Sarah launched into a rapid-fire explanation, her words tumbling out in a rush of technical jargon. James held up a hand, stopping her. "In English, Doctor. What can we do with this information?" Sarah took a deep breath, composing herself. "Simply put, their entire energy network is interconnected, like a power grid, but on a global scale. If we can disrupt it at key points, we could potentially knock out their defenses across entire continents." For the first time since the invasion began, James Hawkins smiled. It was not a pleasant smile, but one that promised retribution. "Dr. Chen," he said, "you may have just given us the key to winning this war." The next few days were a flurry of activity as James and his team formulated a plan to strike at the aliens' power network. They identified key nodes, massive energy relays that the aliens had constructed at strategic points around the globe. "It has to be a coordinated attack," James explained to the assembled resistance leaders. "If we hit them one at a time, they'll adapt. We need to strike all the primary nodes simultaneously." It was an audacious plan, requiring a level of global cooperation unprecedented in human history. But faced with extinction, old rivalries and national boundaries meant little. Chinese special forces would work alongside U.S. Navy SEALs. Russian hackers would coordinate with Silicon Valley tech geniuses. Every resistance cell, every surviving military unit, every civilian volunteer would have a part to play. As the day of the attack approached, tension in the Resistance HQ was palpable. James stood before a global map, watching as units reported in from around the world. Green lights blinked on, one by one, indicating teams ready for action. "Sir," Lieutenant Frost reported, "final team just checked in. We're ready to proceed." James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This could be the turning point in the war, or it could be the final nail in humanity's coffin. Either way, the next few hours would decide the fate of the human race. "Send the go code," he ordered. "All teams, execute Operation Blackout." Across the globe, resistance fighters sprang into action. In the Sahara, a team of French Foreign Legion and Tuareg rebels infiltrated a massive alien energy relay disguised as a sand dune. In the Siberian tundra, Russian Spetsnaz deployed experimental EMP devices against another node. Similar scenes played out in the Amazon, the Australian outback, and dozens of other locations. It was not an easy fight. The aliens defended their installations ferociously, and many brave souls gave their lives in the assault. But slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. In low Earth orbit, Captain Yuki Tanaka and her crew watched from their hidden satellite as the alien power grid began to flicker. "It's working," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. Ground teams press the attack. Their defenses are weakening. As the alien power network destabilized, their once impenetrable energy shields began to fail. Their fearsome weapons, once thought invincible, sputtered and died. For the first time, the invaders knew fear. In the skies over what was once Washington, D.C., Jake Rodriguez led a squadron of fighter jets against suddenly vulnerable alien ships. "This is for Earth, you bastards," he growled, launching a barrage of missiles at the alien flagship. As the massive ship erupted in flames and plummeted from the sky, a cheer went up from resistance fighters around the world. The aliens were not invincible. They could be beaten. Back in the Resistance HQ, James Hawkins watched the reports flood in with grim satisfaction. They had bloodied the invaders' nose, shown them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But he knew this was only the beginning. "Good work, everyone," he said to his team, his voice carrying a mix of pride and determination. "But don't celebrate yet. We've won a battle, not the war. The real fight starts now." As if to underscore his words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Lieutenant Frost's face paled as she read the incoming report. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "we're picking up massive energy signatures entering the solar system. It's a second invasion fleet." James's jaw tightened as he absorbed the news. They had hurt the aliens, yes, but in doing so, they had also provoked them. The war for Earth was about to enter a new, even more desperate phase. "Battle stations," he ordered, his voice calm despite the dire news. "And get me a line to every resistance cell on the planet. They need to know what's coming." As the facility erupted into frenzied activity, James Hawkins stood firm, his mind already formulating strategies for the fights to come. Humanity had proven its worth as a foe. Now it would need to prove its worth as a survivor. The aliens wanted a war of extermination. James was determined to show them just how costly that war would be. The tide turns. The mood in the Resistance headquarters was tense as James Hawkins addressed the assembled leaders. The holographic displays showed the approaching alien reinforcements, a fleet even larger than the first. "Ladies and gentlemen," James began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, "we've proven that these invaders can be hurt. Now we need to show them that taking Earth will cost them everything." He turned to Dr. Sarah Chen. "Doctor, what have you learned from the alien power nodes we destroyed?" Sarah stepped forward, her eyes bright with excitement despite the dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. "The technology is incredible. They're harnessing energy in ways we've only theorized about. But more importantly, we found a weakness." She brought up a schematic of an alien ship. "Their power systems are incredibly efficient, but they're also interconnected. Disrupt one part of the system, and the whole thing goes down." James finished, a grim smile on his face. "Can we weaponize this knowledge?" Sarah nodded. "We're working on a device, something that could create a cascading failure in their power grid, but we'll need to get it close to their command ship." James turned to Colonel Ramirez. "How are our enhanced soldiers performing?" Ramirez's face was a mixture of pride and concern. They're exceeding all expectations in combat, sir. But the psychological effects, some of them are losing touch with their humanity. We're having to cycle them out of combat more frequently. James nodded, his expression thoughtful. We'll need them for what comes next. But remember, their humanity is what makes them strong. Don't let them lose that. As the meeting continued, strategies were formed and plans were made. But everyone knew that the coming battle would push humanity to its very limits. Thousands of miles above, in the cold vacuum of space, the crew of the International Space Station watched as the alien reinforcements approached. They had managed to reclaim the station from alien control during the global counterattack, and now it served as humanity's eyes in the sky. Commander Yuki Tanaka floated in the observation module, her face grim as she relayed information back to Earth. The lead ships will enter lunar orbit in approximately 6 hours, she reported. Main fleet to follow in 12. As she spoke, a flash of movement caught her eye. A small ship, clearly of human design, was maneuvering through the debris field that now orbited Earth, remnants of the battles fought in the early days of the invasion. Unidentified craft, Yuki called out over the comm. This is the ISS. Identify yourself immediately. There was a moment of static, then a familiar voice came through. ISS, this is Jake Rodriguez. Sorry for the scare, but we've got a special delivery for you. Yuki's eyes widened as she recognized the voice of the ace pilot. Rodriguez, what are you doing up here? Bringing you a little gift courtesy of Dr. Chen, Jake replied. His voice strained with concentration as he navigated the treacherous debris field, a prototype that might just give us an edge in the coming fight. As Jake's ship docked with the ISS, Yuki couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps humanity still had a few tricks up its sleeve. Back on Earth, the resistance was mobilizing on a global scale. In the vast steppes of Mongolia, nomadic tribes gathered, their traditional skills of horsemanship and archery now augmented with salvaged alien tech. Led by the fierce warrior Batar, they prepared to harry the alien ground forces, drawing them into the unforgiving landscape. Our ancestors repelled invaders for centuries, Batar told his assembled warriors. These aliens will learn why the steppes have never been conquered. In the megacities of Southeast Asia, a different kind of preparation was underway. Led by the brilliant hacker Mylin, a team of tech experts worked tirelessly to infiltrate the aliens' communication networks. Their goal was ambitious, to sow confusion and discord among the invaders at the crucial moment. Remember, May told her team, her fingers flying over holographic keyboards, in the digital realm, we are the ghosts in their machine. They'll never see us coming. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. Humanity, diverse in its cultures and methods, united in its determination to survive. In the Resistance HQ, James Hawkins coordinated these global efforts, his tactical mind weaving together a strategy that would use Earth's diversity as a weapon against the monolithic alien force. Sir, Lieutenant Frost reported, we're getting word from Dr. Patel. She's made a breakthrough with the alien captive. James hurried to the containment area, where he found Dr. Anaya Patil in animated conversation with the alien prisoner. The creature's skin flickered with bioluminescent patterns, a form of communication that Anaya had painstakingly deciphered. What have you learned? James asked, his eyes fixed on the alien. Anaya turned to him, her face alight with excitement. It's incredible, sir. The alien, it calls itself Zix. It's a conscript. Apparently, not all of their species supports this war. James leaned forward, his interest piqued. Go on. There's a faction among them, Anaya explained, that believes peaceful coexistence with other species is possible. They've been forced into this war by a militaristic leadership. James's mind raced with the implications. If there was division among the aliens, it could be exploited. Can it contact others of its kind? Spread dissent in their ranks? Anaya nodded cautiously. Possibly, but it would be incredibly risky. If caught, Zix would face certain death. James looked at the alien, seeing it in a new light. Here was a being so different from humans, yet facing the same moral dilemmas. "Ask it," he said finally, "but make it clear that the choice is its own." As Anaya relayed the question, the alien's skin rippled with complex patterns. Finally, it made a gesture that Anaya had come to recognize as affirmation. "It agrees," Anaya said, her voice filled with awe. "It says that peace is worth any price." For the first time in weeks, James felt a genuine smile cross his face. "Then let's give peace a chance," he said, "right after we show these invaders why they should never have come to Earth." As the alien fleet drew closer, the Resistance's plan sprang into action. Jake Rodriguez, back on Earth after his space mission, led a squadron of fighters retrofitted with technology reverse-engineered from the alien power nodes. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we're not trying to outgun them. We're trying to outthink them. Use the new tech to disrupt their systems, then hit them hard and fast." In the skies over what was once Europe, the battle was joined. Human fighters darted between massive alien ships, their new weapons causing cascading failures in the invaders' power systems. On the ground, Batar and his Mongolian warriors led alien ground forces on a merry chase across the steppes. Their hit-and-run tactics, combined with their intimate knowledge of the terrain, left the aliens frustrated and disoriented. In the digital realm, Mai Lin and her team struck. Alien communication networks suddenly filled with contradictory orders, false information, and messages of dissent supposedly from their own kind. And high above, on the ISS, Commander Yuki Tanaka prepared to deploy the device Jake had delivered, a prototype weapon designed by Dr. Chen that could potentially disable the alien flagship. "All teams, report in," James ordered from the Resistance HQ. One by one, the responses came in. Jake's squadron, Batar's warriors, May's hackers, Yuki on the ISS, all were in position and ready. "Very well," James said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "Commence Operation Trojan Horse." Across the globe and high above it, humanity launched its counterattack. Jake's fighters struck at the alien fleet, their disruptive weapons causing chaos in the invaders' formations. Batar's forces drew alien ground troops into carefully prepared ambushes, using the landscape itself as a weapon. May's team flooded the alien networks with false information, creating confusion and panic among the invaders. And from the ISS, Yuki launched Dr. Chen's device, watching with bated breath as it sped towards the alien flagship. In the containment area, Zix, the alien conscript, worked with Dr. Puddle to broadcast a message of peace and dissent to its fellow aliens. It was a desperate gamble, but one that could potentially turn the tide of the entire war. As the battle raged, James Hawkins watched the tactical displays, his mind processing the flood of information. The plan was working, but the aliens were adapting quickly. The next few moments would decide everything. "Sir," Lieutenant Frost called out, her voice tense, "Dr. Chen's device has reached the alien flagship." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the main display. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then suddenly, the massive alien ship began to lose power. Its weapons went dark, its shields failed, and it began to drift aimlessly in space. A cheer went up in the command center, but James remained focused. "What's the status of Zix's transmission?" he asked. As if in answer, the tactical displays suddenly shifted. Across the battlefield, alien ships began to power down. Ground forces stopped in their tracks. The invaders' once coordinated assault fell into disarray. "Sir," Frost reported, her voice filled with disbelief, "we're receiving transmissions from multiple alien craft. They're asking to negotiate." James allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had not only survived, but had managed to turn the tide of the invasion. "Tell them we're willing to talk," he said, "but make it clear that any negotiations will be on our terms." As the orders went out, James turned to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying a mix of pride and caution. "We've won a great victory today. But our work is far from over. We need to secure our world, help our people rebuild, and figure out how to coexist with a species that try to exterminate us." He paused, looking each person in the eye. "It won't be easy, but if we can survive this invasion, we can survive anything. The real work of saving humanity starts now." As James finished speaking, a new transmission came in. It was from Zix, the alien conscript. Its message, translated by Dr. Patel, was simple but profound. "Two species, once enemies, now have a chance to become allies. Let us build a future together, among the stars." James nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. Now they had the opportunity to forge a new path, not just for Earth, but for the galaxy. The war was over. The real adventure was just beginning. Victory and aftermath. The dawn broke over a changed Earth. The skies, once filled with alien warships, now held an uneasy peace. In the weeks following the decisive battle, humanity had begun the monumental task of rebuilding and coming to terms with its new reality. James Hawkins stood atop the ruins of what was once the United Nations headquarters in New York, surveying the bustling activity below. Construction crews, a mix of humans and surprisingly willing alien defectors, worked tirelessly to clear debris and lay the foundations for new structures. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Sarah Chen said, joining him at the edge of the broken building. James nodded, his weathered face etched with a mixture of pride and concern. "We've come a long way," he replied. "But we've got an even longer road ahead." The global ceasefire had held for a month now. The alien leadership, faced with widespread dissent among their ranks and the unexpected resilience of humanity, had agreed to negotiations. It was a fragile peace, built on mutual exhaustion and the realization that continued conflict would only lead to mutual destruction. "How are the talks progressing?" James asked, turning to Sarah. She sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "It's complicated. We're dealing with a species that thinks fundamentally differently from us. But we're making progress. Zix has been invaluable as a mediator. The alien conscript, once their prisoner, had become a crucial bridge between the two species. Its willingness to defy its own leadership and aid humanity had earned it respect from both sides. And the technology exchange, James pressed. Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. "It's incredible, James. The advancements we're making in energy production, medicine, space travel, we're leapfrogging centuries of development. But it's not one-sided. The aliens are fascinated by our art, our music, our diversity of cultures. It's like they're rediscovering a part of themselves they have forgotten." As they spoke, a small group of alien diplomats, escorted by human security, emerged from a nearby building. The sight of the towering, iridescent beings walking peacefully among humans was still jarring, but it was becoming more common every day. Commander Hawkins, one of the aliens, called out, its translator device converting its complex bioluminescent patterns into speech. "We were hoping to discuss the proposed joint mission to Mars." James nodded, his posture straightening as he slipped back into his role as Earth's primary military liaison. "Of course, let's head to the conference room." As they made their way through the makeshift headquarters, James reflected on the strange turn of events. Just months ago, these beings had been intent on humanity's extinction. Now they were discussing scientific cooperation. The conference room was a blend of human and alien technology. Holographic displays shimmered in the air, showing detailed plans for a Mars colonization project. Around the table sat an eclectic mix of human scientists, military personnel, and alien representatives. As you can see, the alien diplomat, who called itself XR, began, "Our combined technologies would allow us to establish a self-sustaining colony on Mars within 5 Earth years. This would serve as a proof of concept for future joint ventures deeper into the solar system and beyond." The implications were staggering. Humanity, which had only recently taken its first tentative steps into space, was now on the brink of becoming an interplanetary species. The scientific benefits are clear, Dr. Anaya Patel chimed in. But we need to address the elephant in the room. How can we trust that this isn't just another form of invasion? The room fell silent, the tension palpable. It was Zix who broke the silence, its skin flickering with patterns that conveyed sincerity even before the translator kicked in. Trust must be earned, it said, its artificial voice carrying a note of regret. We have done great harm to your world, a debt that can never truly be repaid. But in working together, in combining our strengths, perhaps we can build something greater than either of our species could achieve alone. James listened intently, his tactical mind assessing the risks and potential rewards. The alien technology could catapult humanity into a golden age, but at what cost? The threat of dependence, of losing what made humans unique, loomed large. We'll need safeguards, James said finally. Checks and balances to ensure that both species have equal say in the project. And we'll need transparency, full disclosure of all technologies and intentions. Evzar's skin rippled in what James had come to recognize as agreement. We anticipated such concerns. We are prepared to submit to oversight from a joint council, with equal representation from both species. As the meeting continued, hammering out the details of this unprecedented cooperation, James couldn't help but marvel at the situation. Humanity had not only survived its greatest trial, but was now poised to take its place among the stars. Meanwhile, across the globe, the process of rebuilding and reconciliation continued. In the Amazon rainforest, Ava and her tribe worked alongside alien biologists, using a combination of traditional knowledge and advanced technology to restore areas devastated by the war. Our ancestors spoke of guardianship, Ava explained to a fascinated alien scientist. We do not own the forest. We are part of it. Perhaps your people can learn this too. The alien's skin flickered with interest as it absorbed this philosophy, so different from the conquest mentality that had driven the invasion. In the megacities of Asia, Madeline led a team of human and alien programmers in developing new systems to manage the complex integration of the two species' technologies. The key, she explained to her diverse team, is to create frameworks that are flexible enough to accommodate both our ways of thinking. We're not just translating code, we're translating cultures. Even in the midst of this cooperation, however, pockets of resistance remained. Not all of humanity was willing to forgive or forget the devastation of the war. In hidden bunkers and secret meetings, groups of hardliners plotted to expel the aliens from Earth entirely. James was all too aware of these factions. He had fought too long and seen too much to believe that peace would come easily. But he was equally convinced that the path forward lay in cooperation, not continued conflict. As the Mars colonization meeting concluded, James pulled Zix aside. "Walk with me," he said, leading the alien to a balcony overlooking the city. "There's something I need to ask you," James began, his voice low. "And I need you to understand that this conversation never happened." Zix's skin rippled with patterns of curiosity and concern. "I understand. Please proceed." James took a deep breath. "There are elements among my people who don't trust this peace, who believe that your people will eventually try to conquer us again. I need to know, is there any truth to their fears?" Zix was silent for a long moment, its alien features unreadable to human eyes. Finally, it spoke. "There are those among my kind who share similar doubts about humans, who fear that once you have our technology, you will turn it against us." The alien's skin flickered with a pattern James had never seen before. "But I have to believe, that this path we are on leads to something greater than either of us can imagine. Yes, there are risks. Yes, there will be setbacks. But the alternative is a return to conflict that will destroy us both." James nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Then we're in agreement. We keep working towards peace, no matter how difficult it gets." As they stood there, human and alien, looking out over the slowly rebuilding city. A thought struck James. "You know," he said with a wry smile, "a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing here, planning a Mars mission with an alien, I'd have thought they were crazy." Zix's translator crackled with what sounded suspiciously like laughter. "And if someone had told me I would find more kinship with an alien species than with my own leaders, I would have doubted their sanity as well. Yet here we are." Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from James's comm device. "Sir," Lieutenant Frost's voice came through. "We're picking up an anomalous signal from deep space. Sir, it's like nothing we've ever seen before." James and Zix shared a look of mutual understanding. The universe, it seemed, had more surprises in store for both their species. "Gather the team," James ordered, already striding back towards the command center. "Looks like our adventure isn't over yet." As they moved to face this new unknown together, James couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had turned enemies into allies and were on the brink of becoming an interplanetary species. Whatever challenges lay ahead, James was confident that they would face them the same way they had faced the invasion, with courage, ingenuity, and an indomitable spirit. The war had brought humanity to the brink. The peace was pushing them to new heights, and the future, vast and unknown, beckoned with infinite possibilities. As the sun set over the rebuilding Earth, casting a golden glow over the strange new world of human-alien cooperation, James Hawkins allowed himself a moment of reflection. They had saved humanity from extinction, yes, but more than that, they had opened the door to a future brighter than anyone could have imagined. The stars, once distant and unreachable, now seemed like beacons calling them home. Humanity's greatest trial had become its greatest opportunity. And James, along with the billions of humans and their new alien allies, was ready to seize it with both hands. The story of Earth was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning.